Senator Rosen, as co-chair of the Abraham Accords Caucus in the Senate, you've supported bipartisan legislation such as the Regional Integration and Normalization Act, which, among other things, seeks to develop a comprehensive framework for economic engagement with Accords countries and key partners. This legislation also authorized funding to expand programs that bring Israelis and Arabs together through science, energy, interfaith, agriculture, and youth engagement. Unfortunately, the bill was introduced just a few months before October 7th and never advanced into law. But reflecting today on 5 years of the Abraham Accords and the current situation in the region, what makes you believe that legislation and initiatives like this still work?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me and for your partnership, your friendship, and the deep work and knowledge that you have and that you share with all of us every day to help us do our job. And I want to thank all of you here for the same thing, and of course, everybody watching, because none of us do this work alone. We have to do this work in solidarity, and we have to do it in such a way that we I guess I'm going to say this and follow up on what the congressman just said. We have to build legislation, here we are, you're in Congress, for the long run, in the Senate and in the House. What does that mean? It means it has to be bipartisan. It can't just fly with the whim of the day, one or another, because we know through all of life has a series of ups and downs, and we want to build for the long haul. So that means the more people you get on, the more solid it is on any kind of bill, any kind of legislation, the more important it becomes. And so, of course, we're pleased to be here in the fifth anniversary of the Abraham Accords, and when that was signed into law, I co-founded and co-lead, of course, the Abraham Accords Caucus in the Senate, built part on some of those partnerships we started when I built the first ever bipartisan task force to combat anti-Semitism. We had a lot of good framework to start there. We've been able to, I can backtrack to early 2023 before October 7th, and we can go past October 7th to Israel talking about the Abraham Accords, but I want to talk specifically about the Regional Integration Normalization Act, affectionately RINA, we'll just call it RINA, as we do. Some of the things in that legislation have already been signed into law. Some of the pieces and parts have been pulled out. One of the most important ones is that we created a position of the special envoy for the Abraham Accords. We want to push the administration to nominate someone to do this. Why? Because the Abraham Accords set the foundation and the framework for regional cooperation and collaboration, for peace, prosperity, and really for people to get together. We think about the Nita Lowey, the famous Nita Lowey, the Middle East Partnership for Peace, named after our dear friend Nita Lowey, mentor and friend to all of us. We think about all these relationships and collaborations that we must have. This is where grassroots, when things in civil society work together, it's easier for diplomacy to happen. And so the Abraham Accords, we're going to backtrack, I'll say right before October 7th, when we took our first bipartisan delegation there, myself and James Langford, we went to Bahrain, UAE, Morocco, and of course Israel. And what we heard from everyone was this, and maybe COVID had something to do with it, that we are no longer just bound by having a common enemy, but we understand now that the global world we live in, we should be bound in our common collaboration and prosperity. So when you think about the Negev Forum, the subjects that were created, working groups that were created after the formation of Abraham Accords in areas like education, culture, cybersecurity, health, tourism, water, power, and I think there's a whole bevy of them. And people realized that when we collaborate and work together, and we'll just take healthcare, for example, that makes all of us better. When we can take water, we can take power, energy, any of those things. When people on the ground see the benefit of working together, when kids today who are 10 years old know that there's tourism going back and forth, and you see meet people from other areas of the world, and they come back and forth. You go to regions where you haven't gone before. You're sharing restaurants of food maybe you haven't eaten before. When that kid grows up, he's going to say, haven't we always talked to them? Haven't they always come here? Haven't we always vacationed there? when we change education programs, UAE doing Holocaust education for the first time. When we do all of these things, this is where the grassroots civil society, their lives are changed for the better, and they're not afraid of these partnerships, and it makes diplomacy easier, which in the long run, the steps are never easy. Nothing's ever as quick as we want, but this, I believe, is what's in the best interest in the long run for lasting peace and security. Of course, we've been on hold since October 7th, a horrific day in the history of Israel and for the world. And we pray every day for the release of the remaining hostages, both dead and alive, the support and help for the families in Gaza that are suffering, that need that humanitarian aid, and to remove Hamas from power, and hope for a day after where this kind of collaboration can create a negotiated two-state solution where we can have peace and prosperity in the region. And it's not easy, never has been in that area of the world, but it doesn't mean that we don't try.
Senator, thank you for that. Talking about the Negev Forum working groups that you mentioned, I'm remembering in January of 1992, at the beginning of the peace process that began with the Madrid Peace Conference in October of 91 in Spain, some of those same topics were were subject of these working groups at that time. In 1992, on tourism, on arms control, on water, the Middle East Desalination Research Center in Oman grew out of that. The idea of regional cooperation to solve common problems, countries working together with Israel, with the United States playing an important role. It's an old idea. We kind of lost that for many years, for decades, but it's now been revived because of the Abraham Accords. Talk about the support in Nevada for this relationship between the United States and Israel, this relationship between the United States and Abraham Accords countries. What are the impacts? What are the benefits for the United States in this kind of regional cooperation that you've helped encourage?
Well, I think the benefits, we can talk specifically about memos of understanding on water. I live in the desert Southwest, southern Nevada. All of Nevada, been in severe persistent drought for decades. And so we've had memos of understanding with our Desert Research Institute on, I'll say, water smart technology. Water is, people say water's the new oil, but honestly, water, human life cannot exist without water. So this is where Nevada and is the state of Israel have a lot in common. In fact, much of the West Coast. When we were there in 2023, we met with the folks doing the Prosperity Blue-Green Project, where we would, UAE would fund it, Jordan would build solar panels, sending power into Israel. Israel will build desalination, sending much needed water into Jordan. And these would be these cooperative partnerships. But we also met with some civil engineers. The Jordan River, used much in the same way, has a different history than the Colorado River, but the same as we use the Colorado River in the West Coast. And so a lot of the ways that they're working with water smart technology for farming, how they're actually, and I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to explain this correct in an engineer way, but they're building, I don't want to say it's a pipeline, but water lines to let the Jordan River heal itself by taking water from other places and bringing it at the top of the Jordan River, if you will, and allowing it to flow down and healing the river and allowing it to be used. These are things that we're exporting to what we need to do. So this kind of thing just doesn't stay in the Middle East. It goes to not just the Colorado River, but things like this go around the world. But these partnerships, what I want to say is collaboration for the benefit of civil society, for all of us. If there are benefits in healthcare or technology, it just doesn't stay there. If they're finding ways to smart farm better, use water better, manage their rivers better, drought situation better, well, we're going to use that here or wherever around the world. So sometimes in Las Vegas, I think the tourism slogan, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but what happens in these collaborations and cooperations helps us all be healthier, be smarter, be safer. And I think that when we see the benefit of what our friendships can do, whether it's trade and jobs and education, then this is how we change those hearts and minds. This is how we ultimately beat our adversaries who wish to defeat that, who wish to lead with hate instead of lead with hope. And I believe that the Abraham Accords are still those kernels of hope for this collaborative future. We need to, I'll use the water analogy, sow that seed of hope and let that blossom. And through all of those things, we can hopefully push back those that wish to do so many harm.
I think the last question, because I know that you have a hard stop as well, Senator.
Votes, you know, you're here. There, you know how that
But
goes.
thank you for coming over from the Senate to this, and I'm sorry that we didn't do this in one of the Senate office buildings.
Next year.
Okay,
Come
we
on
will.
over. We'll help you get a room.
But talk about the challenges that exist today to expanding the circle of peace between Israel and its Arab neighbors.
So I was in May in the Middle East. We were in Israel, we were in the West Bank, we were in Jordan, and we were all over Iraq and talking to not just government leaders, with refugee camps, civil society, NGOs. We know the attack on Iran's nuclear sites had not yet happened, but now we know Iran is at its weakest point in well, for sure decades, maybe even longer. We know is Syria and Lebanon on the cusp of maybe a new day. And what everyone said, what they said in 2023, what all the dignitaries and I've spoken with and folks since that time is that don't leave us. It's important to stay. It's important to fund what are the cooling platters. If we give families food, then some of those young kids are not radicalized to go feed the family. What are the cooling saucers? What are the things that we can do to promote peace and things in the region? And we talked about, of course, the war in Gaza, but we'll talk about all the other things that folks wish for. And they said, we have to defeat what's going on. And there are small things with large impact that we can do to change the situation. So they were asking us to please not leave, because if we leave a vacuum, well, and Iran gets a chance to get back in, and China's right there on its heels, we know who want to fill that vacuum. And it's not with something good. And so how we think about the Abraham Accords, how we think about our diplomacy. I'm not in the State Department, so we legislate, and we're not in the administration, but how we try to potentiate this to promote what we hope for, and hopefully that pushes down or pushes away what I dare say I'll just call hate in the region, or our adversaries in the region. I think this is what everyone wants to see. There's a ways to get there because we don't have enough time to discuss what's happening in Gaza, but there is the desire there for everyone that we've spoke to, both in person, on the phone, before October 7th and since, and I'm going to do everything that I can to try to move towards that.
And also very significant that the countries that signed up for the Abraham Accords 5 years ago have maintained that commitment.
No one's left.
Even though they're not necessarily politically popular in their countries, the leaders know that this is the direction that those countries need to go.
And there are others that told me that they still want to join. Yeah. We just have to be able to find that way for that on-ramp. And like I said, we have a ways to get there because of what's happening in Gaza. But if we can create a ceasefire, get the hostages home, get the humanitarian aid, begin to work with everyone on a workable plan for the future, we're going to give people an on-ramp to join the Abraham Accords and begin to take this inflection point. We're at a moment when we can change the trajectory of our region, and we want to, and we have to give them those on-ramps to get there.
Senator Jacky Rosen, thank you for your leadership in maintaining American commitment to the Abraham Accords, and frankly, in your leadership in the fight against anti-Semitism. You've been a staunch ally of ours, of all of ours in the room. Thank you again for being here today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Next year in the Senate.